My family told me I was a failure for living my life my own way, so I did something they'll never forget. What happened next changed everything, and now I'm not sure who's really in the wrong. You know that moment when you realize your family doesn't just underestimate you, they actively disregard you? Yeah, that was me. I'm 32 years old, single, and if you asked my parents, I'm a failure. Not because I've done anything particularly wrong, mind you, but because I haven't ticked off their checklist: no wife, no kids, no real family of my own. Meanwhile, my younger sister Amanda, 26, bubbly, married, can do absolutely no wrong. In their eyes, she's the golden child, the crown jewel of success, the one everyone oohs and ahs over. This year, they didn't even invite me to Christmas. Yup, they straight up didn't bother. And it stung, not because I hadn't done anything wrong, but because my mom called me the week before, and not to wish me a happy holiday. No. She called to deliver a lecture. Apparently, Amanda had let it slip that I said Christmas at their house was a waste of time because it's all about her. Which, I never said. But did they check? Of course not. Mom told me, in this saccharine tone I'd heard a million times before, we don't want negativity to ruin the day. Maybe it's best if you sit this one out. I didn't know what hurt more, the words, or the fact that I wasn't even surprised. Fine. I wasn't going to grovel for an invitation. And then, the next day, Amanda called me. I thought maybe she'd realized her slip-up and was trying to smooth things over, maybe apologize. Nope. She wanted money. Hey, I need some help with tuition for my graduate program, she chirped. Mom and Dad can't really afford much right now, and, well, you're doing well, so. Wait. Hold up. So let me get this straight, they just banned me from Christmas, but now it was perfectly fine to treat me like the family ATM? I couldn't even process it fast enough. I didn't answer right away. Nope. I decided to handle this in a way they'd never forget. I told Amanda I'd think about it. She was satisfied, chirped a quick thanks, and hung up, probably already imagining herself as some kind of mastermind. Meanwhile, I wasn't thinking about sending her money. I was thinking about every single year this had gone on. Amanda had always been the golden child. Always the one getting praise, attention, the best of everything. And my parents? They never even tried to hide it. They were proud of her accomplishments, which, if we're being honest, usually boiled down to being charming and knowing how to wrap people around her little finger. Me? I was the responsible one. The boring one. The kid who worked hard, got good grades, stayed out of trouble. And in our house, responsibility didn't earn you respect or celebration, it earned you exploitation. High school? Amanda wanted a car. My parents asked me to contribute, dipping into my savings from my part-time job. College? Fancy out-of-state program? They suggested I postpone graduate school to cover her expenses. And somehow Amanda always spun it so she was the victim who deserved help the most. Every time I tried to set boundaries, try to say no, it became a lecture on how families should support each other. Translation, support Amanda. No questions asked. And now here she was, asking for thousands of dollars for grad school, while I wasn't even welcome at Christmas. I wasn't angry, not the screaming, red-faced kind of angry, but calm. Detached. And in that moment, I knew I'd had enough. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about Christmas. It was about years of being dismissed, taken advantage of, and treated as if my value depended entirely on what I could do for her. So I called my mother back. Hey, I said. Can we have a family meeting? Me, you, Dad, Amanda, her husband. I think we need to clear the air. She hesitated. Finally, she agreed, probably assuming I was about to crawl, apologize, maybe grovel a little. I didn't correct her. Let her think what she wanted. This time, I was going to speak my mind, and for once, I was going to make sure they listened. The family reunion was set for the following Saturday, at my parents' house. And me? I didn't bother dressing up. Jeans, a hoodie, old sneakers. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to finally say what had needed saying for years. When I showed up at my parents' house that Saturday, Amanda and her husband, Greg, were already there. Greg gave me one of those half smiles he always does, the kind that says, I don't want to be here, but I guess I can't escape it either. Amanda? She wasn't even pretending. She was glued to her phone, scrolling with that perfect air of disinterest that somehow screamed, I'm better than this whole conversation. Mom came bustling out of the kitchen, tray in hand, loaded with coffee and cookies, trying her hardest to play the gracious host. Bless her heart, but this wasn't a social visit. Dad, on the other hand, was planted in his recliner like a king surveying a stranger's house. His eyes followed me, cold and sharp, silently reminding me I was somehow trespassing just by existing. Once everyone had semi-settled, Mom's voice rang out, sweet as honey, so, what did you want to talk about, honey? She sounded like she thought sugarcoating could cover up the fact that she'd literally kicked me out of Christmas 2 weeks earlier. I didn't waste a second. I leaned in, keeping my voice calm, measured. I want to talk about Christmas. About the fact that I wasn't invited, because Amanda told you something that wasn't true. Amanda's head popped up, and she cut in immediately, voice dripping with that fake innocence that always made my skin crawl. I didn't lie. That's what you said, or maybe you didn't mean it that way, but it sounded like it. I raised an eyebrow, letting the words hang in the air. Really? I thought. Because I don't remember ever saying Christmas was a waste of time. Or, honestly, even talking about it at all. But somehow, she'd spun it into gospel, and Mom and Dad bought it like gospel too. She shrugged, leaning back in her chair, smug. I was just being honest. I nodded slowly, biting back the surge of anger rising in my chest. Right, just like you were being honest when you called me the very next day, asking for money for your graduate program. The room went dead silent. Amanda's face froze, and for the first time ever, I saw Greg actually squirm. Mom jumped in, desperation thick in her voice. Wait a minute. This isn't about money, it's never about money. I cut her off, calm but sharp. That's exactly why I'm here. Because I'm tired of being treated like the family ATM. You didn't invite me to Christmas, but somehow, it's perfectly fine to expect me to finance Amanda's entire life. Do you have any idea how messed up that is? Dad finally spoke, voice gruff, like a man trying to regain control. Watch your tone, son. We're a family. Families help each other. I couldn't stop myself. I laughed. A full, rich laugh, not a nervous chuckle, but the kind that digs under someone's skin. Help each other? Really? Is that what this is? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a lot like you all expect me to give, and give, while Amanda takes and takes. Tell me, when's the last time anyone here actually helped me? No one said a word. Exactly. And that, I said slowly, letting it sink in, is why I'm done. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible. Amanda had her nose back in her phone, trying, futilely, to pretend she wasn't at the center of the storm. Greg shifted in his seat, clearly wishing he'd stayed home. Mom looked like she might cry, and Dad just sat there, his face red with frustration, clenching and unclenching his fists. Finally, Dad broke the silence. You've got some nerve, he said, voice tight. Talking to us like this after everything we've done for you. We gave you life. Put a roof over your head. Fed you. Clothed you. And this is how you repay us? I couldn't help it. I laughed again. Not a polite laugh. A real, unapologetic laugh, the kind that makes people shift uncomfortably in their seats. You gave me life? Wow. So I'm supposed to be eternally grateful that you decided to have a child? That's your big point? That I owe you for existing? I shook my head, still laughing. You're not serious. Mom's voice wavered, cracking. We sacrificed so much for you, we worked hard to give you a good life, and now you act like we're the bad guys. I raised an eyebrow, letting her words hang. Sacrificed? I said slowly. Sacrificed what? All I ever heard growing up was how much harder everything was because of me. I was the trial run. I was the practice child so that Amanda could have it easier. You didn't sacrifice for me, you invested in me, expecting repayment with interest. And guess what? I've over-delivered, over and over again. And in that moment, the truth finally hung between us like a lightning bolt. No sugarcoating. No excuses. No more pretending. Dad leaned forward suddenly, jabbing a finger straight at me like he was trying to drive his point into my chest. You've always been ungrateful, he barked. You think money solves everything, but let me tell you something, family isn't about money. It's about loyalty. And right now, you're failing at that loyalty. I blinked at him, letting the words sink in, disbelief dripping from every syllable of my voice. Loyalty. I repeated slowly. You mean like the loyalty you showed when you believed Amanda's little lie without even asking for my side? Or the loyalty you showed when you disinvited me from Christmas, but somehow expected me to fork over thousands of dollars the very next day? That kind of loyalty? Mom clutched her hand to her chest, eyes wide, as if I'd just slapped her across the face. We didn't uninvite you. We just thought, it would be better if you stayed home this year. You've been so negative lately, she stammered. I cut her off, my voice sharp. Negative? Me? Wonder why, maybe? Could it be because I've spent my entire adult life being treated like I don't matter unless I'm useful, to you, or to Amanda? Maybe it's because no matter what I do, it's never enough? But you know what, you're right. This isn't about money. It's about respect. And I'm done pretending I don't notice how little of that you actually have for me. Amanda finally lifted her eyes from her phone, her cheeks flaming red. This is ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. All I did was ask for a little help. You don't need to make a big, dramatic thing out of it. I locked eyes with her, and for the first time, I saw something there, a flicker of nervousness, that perfect crack in her armor. This isn't dramatic, I said, my voice calm but cold. This is reality. And you're about to see just how real it is. The room went utterly still. You could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, like the only sound daring to break the tension. Mom's eyes were wide with disbelief. Dad's narrowed with anger. Amanda's darting everywhere, like she was trying to find an escape hatch that didn't exist. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a long, deliberate breath, feeling the weight of every year I'd carried in that house pressing down. All right, I said, letting the words roll slowly over them. Since none of you seem to get it, let me make this crystal clear. You want me to help pay for Amanda's graduate school? Fine. But there's a condition. Mom's face lit up with cautious hope. Oh honey, that's all we're asking. I raised a hand to stop her mid-sentence. No, let me finish. I'll pay for Amanda's schooling, but after that, I'm done. Permanently. No more money. No more family reunions. No more Christmas invitations, or lack thereof. I'm done. I let it hang in the air. The silence that followed was deafening, like the whole house had collectively held its breath. Amanda's jaw literally dropped. You're kidding, she whispered, disbelief flashing across her face. No, I said evenly, calm as I could make it. This is the deal. You get what you want, and I finally get some peace. Mom's hands flew to her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. How can you say that? We're your family. You don't mean that. I mean every word, I said, voice steady. Let's be honest. I'm not part of this family, not really. I'm just the guy you call when you need something. And I'm sick of it. So this is my line in the sand. Take it, or leave it. Dad stood abruptly, his face turning a dangerous shade of red. That's the most selfish thing I've ever heard. What kind of son leaves his family over money? I leaned forward, not backing down, voice rising with every memory, every insult I'd swallowed over the years. The kind of son who's been emotionally abandoned for years. You want to talk about selfish? How about Amanda lying to get me kicked out of Christmas, then calling the next day to ask for thousands of dollars? How about the two of you going along with it, like it's perfectly normal? You don't get to lecture me about selfishness. And just like that, the house was frozen. No one moved. Every word I'd kept bottled up for years now hung in the room like smoke, unavoidable, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Amanda finally found her voice, her tone sharp and shrill. This is crazy. You're just trying to make everyone feel guilty because you don't want to help. Typical. I looked her dead in the eye. You're right, I said calmly, letting the weight of my words sink in. I don't want to help. Not anymore. And after today, I won't. So, what's it going to be? Do you want the money, or do you want to keep pretending that this is a real family? For the first time in my life, they all went silent. Speechless. I wasn't sure if it was shock at what I had said, or shock that I had actually stood up to them. Either way, the ball was now in their court. The silence hung heavy, the kind that makes you painfully aware of every shallow breath, every nervous shuffle. I had always been the dependable one, the weakling, the one who kept the peace. Not this time. Finally, Amanda broke the silence, her voice rising. You're really going to sit here and blackmail your own family over money? Do you hear yourself? This is disgusting. I couldn't help but smile. Blackmail, I thought. Funny. I mean, isn't that what you did when you lied to Mom and Dad about me just to have Christmas all to yourself? Or is it only disgusting when someone refuses to play along with your little schemes? Greg, who had been silent the whole time, cleared his throat. Hey, maybe we should all just calm down. This is Getty. No. I cut him off sharply. We're not calming down. Not this time. That is exactly the problem. Every time I try to set boundaries or challenge the way I'm treated, someone tells me to calm down. That's how this family maintains the status quo, by sweeping everything under the rug and pretending it's okay. Mom was on the verge of tears. We never meant for you to feel this way. You're part of this family. You always have been. Really? I said, voice steady but biting. Because it doesn't feel that way. It feels like I'm only part of this family when you need something. The rest of the time? I'm an outsider. A failure. Isn't that what you called me, Mom? A failure, because I don't have a wife, because I don't have kids, because I don't live the life you think I should live? She opened her mouth to protest, but I wasn't finished. Here's the thing, I've built a life that I'm proud of. I have a good job, a solid group of friends, and peace of mind. And I'm not going to let you, or anyone, take that away from me. So, like I said, this is your choice. You want me to pay for Amanda's college? Fine. But don't expect me to stick around after that. I'm done being used. Dad threw up his hands in exasperation. This is ridiculous. Families have disagreements, but they don't just walk away. You're being dramatic. No, I said firmly, standing my ground. What's dramatic is pretending that everything is fine when it's not. What's dramatic is expecting me to keep bending over backwards while Amanda, and the rest of you, take me for granted. This isn't about money. It's about respect. And since I clearly don't have any here, I'm taking myself out of the equation. The room fell silent again, heavier than before. I could see the disbelief in Mom's eyes, the fury in Dad's, the panic flickering across Amanda's face. For the first time, I felt in control, not just of this moment, but of my life. The room fell silent. Absolutely silent. You could hear a pin drop, or maybe it was the air itself holding its breath, waiting for someone, anyone, to respond. But nobody did. Shock, disbelief, confusion, it was all written across their faces. They couldn't quite process that I was serious. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pleading. I was calm, collected, and for the first time, in control. Amanda's mouth opened, then closed. She tried again, her voice shaky. You can't just. Yes, I can, I interrupted, my tone steady, deliberate. And I just did. I'm not here to argue anymore. I'm here to tell you that I've made my decision. And it's final. Greg looked down at his hands, avoiding my eyes like they might betray him. Mom wiped her tears furiously, pretending not to look at me, as if avoiding my gaze could somehow undo reality. Dad's face was red, a mix of anger and something else, fear, maybe, or the frustration of finally losing control. Amanda's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. So, what happens now? I took a deep, steadying breath, letting it fill the room. Now, you get to deal with the consequences of your actions. I'll pay for what I said I'd pay for, but that's it. After that, I'm gone. I'm done being your doormat, your punching bag, your family's cash machine. I'm walking away from the drama, the manipulation, and the disrespect. And honestly, I let a small, satisfied pause hang in the air. It feels incredible. Another long pause. Then Dad muttered something under his breath, grumble, complaint, maybe even a curse. I didn't care. I'd said my piece. I'd drawn the line. And for the first time, I felt free. I gathered my things, took one last long look around the room, a room that had never really felt like home, and walked out the door. I didn't look back. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I just went. For the first time in my life, I chose myself. Stepping out into the cool evening air, I finally felt the weight lift off my shoulders. For years, it had been like carrying a backpack full of bricks, every judgment, every snide remark, every expectation from them pressing down on me. But tonight, I was light. I was free. I walked without a destination, letting my feet decide the path. The streetlights cast long shadows, flickering like they were echoing the chaos I had left behind. Somewhere in the distance, laughter spilled from a cafe, life moving on, indifferent to the storm I had just walked away from. And it was perfect. The next few days were strange. Silence from my parents. Amanda's texts ignored. Greg avoiding me entirely. It was like my refusal to bend had frozen them in place. But for me? Peace. I could finally breathe without worrying about who was judging me, plotting against me, or expecting me to be something I wasn't. And slowly, the world started to feel different. I noticed little things, the sun hitting my apartment window just right, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the quiet confidence that comes from standing your ground. People's petty dramas, their gossip, their manipulations, they seemed smaller, almost meaningless compared to the power I'd reclaimed over my life. I started to say no. To friends who drained me. To coworkers who took advantage. To situations that didn't feel right. It was addictive, this sense of control. Every time I said it, I felt lighter. Stronger. Alive in a way I hadn't felt in decades. And yes, sometimes the loneliness hit. There were moments I wondered if I'd made the wrong choice, if I'd thrown away family forever. But then I reminded myself, family isn't always about blood. Sometimes, it's about respect. Love. Safety. And mine? I was finally giving it to myself. A week later, the first ripple from my decision hit. I was scrolling through social media when I saw it. Amanda had posted a family Christmas recap album. Every photo carefully curated to show her as the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect sibling. And me? Not a single picture. Not even a mention. For a moment, a pang of hurt hit me. I won't lie, I had expected some backlash, but seeing it so blatant, it stung. Then I laughed. Not a polite, nervous laugh. A deep, real laugh that shook off the last remnants of guilt. They were trying to shame me online, and it wasn't working. Not anymore. The next call came from Greg. Hesitant. Unsure of his own voice. Hey, are you okay? He asked, like he wasn't sure if I was a friend or an enemy. I could almost hear the gears turning. He didn't know whether to apologize, manipulate, or stay silent. I told him the truth, I'm better than okay. I'm finally me. That's what matters. That simple line changed everything. He didn't know whether to argue or cry, so he just listened. And that silence? It was golden. Then came Amanda's attempt at reconciliation. She called, voice dripping with false sweetness, trying to guilt me with phrases like, we're family, how can you just? I let her speak, and when she paused for breath, I replied calmly, you can't control me anymore. And if family means manipulation and judgment, I'd rather be alone. The silence on her end was deafening. I didn't have to argue. I didn't have to yell. I didn't have to beg for respect. I just stated my truth. And that was enough. From that moment, life shifted in ways I hadn't expected. Colleagues noticed my confidence. Friends reached out more, drawn to the energy I was radiating. I started volunteering for causes I cared about, taking trips I'd always postponed, rediscovering hobbies that made me lose track of time. For the first time in my life, I was living for me, not anyone else. It wasn't perfect. Some days, I still missed the idea of family, the comfort of old routines, the warmth of holiday traditions. But I knew one hard truth, I would never trade my peace and self-respect for a role I was never meant to play. And that was the ultimate victory. It all blew up the weekend after New Year's. I was sitting at a small cafe downtown, sipping coffee, when my phone buzzed, notifications stacking faster than I could read them. Amanda had posted again. But this time, it wasn't just pictures of her smiling with the family. No, this was a public rant disguised as a holiday reflection. She painted me as selfish, cold, ungrateful, claiming I had ruined Christmas for everyone and turned my back on the family. I stared at the screen, took a slow breath, and laughed. Not nervously. Not awkwardly. But a laugh that shook off every ounce of guilt they'd piled on me for decades. This wasn't personal anymore. This was performance art. Every carefully crafted word screamed desperation, insecurity, and the truth she refused to see. She had no control over me. Then something surprising happened. Messages started trickling in. Old friends. Distant cousins. Even coworkers. Wow, that post seemed off. Are you okay? One asked. Another wrote, honestly, I think you made the right call. Family isn't supposed to feel like this. It hit me. People were seeing through the drama, through the facade Amanda had built for years. My small act of standing my ground had rippled farther than I could have imagined. That evening, I posted a short statement. No anger, no insults. Just truth, simple and clear. I choose peace over pretense. I choose honesty over obligation. I choose myself. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in, stories of others who had endured toxic families, strangers thanking me for inspiring them to stand up for themselves. For the first time, I felt seen, not as the failure my parents said I was, not as the black sheep Amanda tried to make me, but as a person with worth, boundaries, and a voice. Amanda called that night. I let it ring. Twice. Then I left it. She could scream, guilt trip, or sob, none of it mattered. My life. My peace. My choices. They were mine. Later, looking at my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Confidence in my posture. A spark in my eyes. A weight lifted from my chest. I had walked through fire and emerged intact. Unashamed. Unbroken. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, my inbox exploded again. Amanda had posted a follow-up, subtler this time, trying to cast herself as the victim of my cold, vengeful heart. But the irony? The harder she tried to manipulate perception, the more obvious her desperation became. I made a choice. I wouldn't react. No posts, no comments, no explanations, just quiet observation. And quietly, people noticed. Friends who had silently suffered under similar family pressure started sharing their own stories. Strangers from support groups, forums, and communities reached out, thanking me for breaking the silence on toxic family dynamics. It was as if my single act of standing up had ignited a fire under an entire community that had been quietly enduring for years. Meanwhile, my parents called, frantic, unsure, unsteady. Mom's voice trembled, "We just want peace, why can't you forgive us?" I let it hang in the air for a moment before answering, calm and unwavering, "Peace is earned, not demanded. And forgiveness doesn't mean I ignore boundaries or dismiss the past." Silence. Not because they understood, but because they had no script for someone refusing to play their role anymore. No guilt, no threat, no reminder of past duties could bend me back into the shape they wanted. Then, unexpectedly, some family members who had stayed silent for years began reaching out, not to scold, but to listen. A distant cousin shared their own story of resentment and manipulation. An aunt admitted she'd always felt caught between Amanda and me, unsure who to defend. And for the first time, I realized, I wasn't alone. My family was messy, yes, but there were allies within it I hadn't expected. By the end of the week, Amanda escalated her public campaign. Subtle jabs, sarcastic memes, carefully constructed misunderstandings designed to make me look unreasonable. But it didn't stick. People who knew the real story recognized the pattern. My choice to disengage, to set firm boundaries, had turned the tables. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet, unshakable power, not over Amanda, not over my parents, but over my own life. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was living. And for the first time, that life truly felt like mine. The days that followed felt almost surreal. Word of my stand spread through quiet whispers at family gatherings I hadn't even attended, small comments that carried more weight than words ever could. People who once assumed I'd quietly obey my parents' every wish were suddenly reconsidering. Even distant relatives reached out, messages of quiet support, subtle nods that didn't need to be announced. Amanda's attitude shifted too, though slowly. At first, she tried her old tactics, guilt-laden texts, snide comments masquerading as jokes, passive-aggressive posts on social media. But I didn't panic. I didn't apologize. I stayed calm, measured, sometimes silent, sometimes firm. I won't engage in that conversation. Respect is non-negotiable. And surprisingly, it forced her to reflect. She wasn't used to resistance. I had always been the easy target, the one to bend, to smooth over conflicts, to take the blame. Now, that role was gone. I watched her struggle, realizing that family dynamics could shift, radically, when someone refused to play the old game. Even my parents reacted differently. Fewer calls. Fewer guilt trips. Invitations that once felt like mandates became optional. And me? I felt no longing. No regret. Only relief. The anxiety I had carried for decades evaporated, leaving clarity, control, and a strange sense of peace. Then one afternoon, an unexpected text, "We may have pushed too hard. Can we meet?" From Mom. I read it twice, skepticism flaring, but I responded carefully, "We can talk, but nothing is changing unless respect is mutual." That single line set the tone for every interaction that followed. By midwinter, something remarkable emerged. Our family slowly settled into a new rhythm, one that didn't revolve around hierarchy, favoritism, or performance. Amanda still craved attention, but she began to recognize I wouldn't sacrifice my dignity for appearances. My parents, reluctantly at first, started treating me like an adult with boundaries, not a problem to fix. And me? I finally understood something fundamental. Peace isn't found by pleasing everyone. Peace comes from protecting yourself, standing firm, and refusing to let toxic patterns dictate your life. Every day felt like a quiet victory. Every calm, measured conversation reinforced a simple truth: I had reclaimed my life, one boundary at a time. The transformation wasn't dramatic, explosive, or cinematic, it was quiet, deliberate, lasting. And for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged, not because I fit someone else's checklist, but because I had finally claimed my own. As the dust settled at home, I began noticing subtle shifts outside the family circle too. Friends who had once tiptoed around my anxieties now treated me differently. They saw how I stood my ground with Amanda and my parents, and suddenly my voice carried a weight it never had before. Conversations that used to feel one-sided now felt balanced. At work, the change was just as clear. I wasn't more aggressive, just steady, assertive, unshakable. People sought my opinions on projects, trusted my judgment without hesitation. It was like the confidence I had reclaimed at home had quietly spilled into every corner of my life. Even strangers responded differently. Small interactions, a barista mispronouncing my name, a neighbor asking for help, no longer triggered irritation or self-doubt. I engaged, offered my opinion, and walked away without that familiar, gnawing second-guessing. The most surprising change was within me. I realized how much of my past behavior had been shaped by fear of rejection, fear of confrontation, fear of being labeled a failure. Now, my choices came from clarity, not anxiety. I spoke when I had something to say, stayed silent when it served me, and prioritized my own well-being above all else. Amanda eventually tried to test me again. A passive-aggressive jab at a family brunch could have sparked the old drama, but I smiled, brushed it off, and redirected the conversation. The frustrated glance she shot me said everything. I was no longer the person she could manipulate with guilt or petty tricks. And that's when it hit me, reclaiming your life doesn't mean tearing the past to pieces. It's about planting boundaries, nurturing self-respect, and letting your actions speak louder than old family narratives. With each day, I felt more grounded, more authentic, more in control of my story. And the gift? Freedom. Not the loud, showy kind, but the quiet, persistent freedom of knowing that my worth isn't anyone else's to define. That realization, hard won, painstaking, deeply personal, was mine, unshakable, and no one could ever take it away.